So welcome everybody to this online chat with Tamlyn Currin from jancesrobinson.com and the Outsiders group from Languedoc in the south of France. I'm Louise, I founded the Outsiders group, and I'm just going to say a few words of introduction before we get into chatting to the growers who are with us here today about what life is like in Languedoc under lockdown. So the Outsiders group was formed 10 years ago, and today we've got 18 members. And the thing that makes everybody an outsider in this group is the fact that they've come to Languedoc-Roussillon to make wine here. It was a considered choice. They didn't just fall into it. And it was a choice to work in the world of wine. Well, there are also people who like to think a little bit outside of the box, which is what makes it fun for me to work with them. And in this time of lockdown, when things have been quite tricky, I like to think that being part of a group like this that's mutually supportive is possibly a good thing. We're going to hear a little bit from each of the 6 producers about how they're managing in these difficult times. The people in the group make wine that is sold through quality restaurants, wine bars, wine shops, and you can imagine with all those businesses closing down overnight and remaining closed now for 8 weeks in France, things have got difficult. Orders have simply slowed right down to 0. But meanwhile, the vines are still growing, work has to be done, wine has to be put in bottles. So yeah, it's been tricky, but let's find out a bit more about that by talking to the 6 producers. Shasha Panman from Rives-Blanques, I think I'll start with you if that's okay. Can you tell us a little bit about how life has been at Rives-Blanques under lockdown?
Hi Louise, yes, thank you, and lovely to see you even across this sort of virtual divide. Like you said, the lockdown, it's been a huge change in everything that we do, really, like for everybody. And the commercial side of it has been frankly quite scary, especially because, you know, one of the reasons why the wine business is such a lovely business to work in is you work with such wonderful people, and many of the difficulties that we are facing are because the restaurants and the wine shops and the small importers that we work with are having such a difficult time, and our customers, many of which have become friends, can't come and visit us now. So that side of it is scary, but at the same time, as you said, the life in the vineyard does go on, and it keeps us very, very busy. For us, we've just finished planting 10,000 new vines. You know, in a way, if we're looking at the optimistic side and the sort of the silver lining, it's a real opportunity for us to focus on what really matters. Good wines, we think, come from good fields, and having this time to really focus on the attention on the vineyard at just this moment when life in the vineyard is really taking off is great. And on top of that, we're enormously grateful. We're here as a family, we're here together. There's been such a wonderful sense of community as well in the area, everyone helping each other out. And those are reasons for optimism, I would say.
Good. And the wine that you sent to Tamlyn to taste, all 6 producers sent bottles of their wines to Tam so that she would be able to enjoy those before we started this session. The wine that you sent, Shasha, is quite unusual, isn't it?
It is. So it's our Blanquette Limoux. It's unusual in a number of different ways. It's made with 100% Modat, which is our local indigenous grape variety. It's actually, when I said we just planted 1,000 vines, it's largely Modat we've been planting. We've been planting different clones. So we actually have the widest range of clones of Modat now here at Rives-Blanques that exists anywhere. We got them from the conservatory, which is great for biodiversity as well as resilience to climate change. It's a sparkling wine, one of the oldest sparkling wines in the world, which is why we use on the label the calligraphy from the archives, from the monks at Saint-Hilaire that discovered it, how to make sparkling wine.
Great, good. Tam, what did you make of that? Did you taste the wine already?
Yes, I tasted it, and what I love about Modat is that it has this wonderful, almost contradictory character between floral and earthy. And one of the things that I wrote about this wine was that it makes me think of a small child dressed in a fairy outfit, but up to her knees and chin in mud and having the most wonderful time. It's got a kind of a wild fairy spirit, this wine, and I think that it's quite special because it is 100% Mosaic. It is Blanquette de Limoux, but it's bone dry, so it makes it a fantastic food wine as well. Shasha, what would you pair this wine with? What do you think is one of the best pairings for this?
It's lovely. Tamlyn, I love that description. It's absolutely wonderful. I think you really captured the spirit of the wine as we see it. For me, this wine, you know, obviously a lot of the time people use things like Blanquette at big celebrations and weddings, and that's such a joy for us to see. But for us, this is really a wine that we drink as a family in the evening at the end of a long day on the terrace. And so we often pair it with sort of salty snacks, anything fried. I love it actually personally with kale chips. It's vegan, and the wines are vegan as well. So.
That's a great idea, actually. Thanks, Shasha.
Whoops. Person who's just joined us, could you turn off your video, please? Because we're recording this session and we need the videos to be off. Thank you very much. That's lovely. Okay, Shasha, I remember your mum, Caryl, telling me a story a while back about a wine that was made by Rives-Blanques called The Good Neighbour. And there was quite a fun story behind that. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, and it's a story that we really feel now in particular of how grateful we are for the kind of broader community that we live in. So that was one of our harvests, you know, like one of the big challenges of winemaking really is you always think, you know, every harvest is different and there's always something that goes wrong, always something that floors you at the last minute. I sometimes like to think that winemakers, a bit like vines, kind of thrive under stress. You know, it's that kind of difficulty that gets us going. And this was one year where the press broke down in the middle, when the press was full of our top field. And we were so grateful because our neighbour took the piece out of their press to put it into ours in order for us to be able to save our grapes, putting their own harvest at risk, you know, because whenever you take something out of these machines, there's a potential problem that might come. And I think that spirit of kind of helping each other, something we see it a lot in the area, is wonderful, and something that we're really appreciative of at the moment, whether it's, you know, all of us doing grocery runs for each other or helping in more serious ways for the wine like that.
That's very heartening, isn't it? Oh, good. Well, that's really nice to hear. I'm going to go to the man in the red t-shirt. Keep Calm and Carignan was the title that I dreamed up for this session. Obviously, we're talking about grapes that are not just Carignan, but there are people in the group who make Carignan very beautifully. And John Bojanowski of Clos du Gravillas is one of those people. And he's obviously come wearing his Carignan t-shirt today. John, do you have any tales of woe, tales of adversity, tractor trouble that you'd like to tell us about? What have you lived through?
During the lockdown, no, it's actually been like Groundhog Day. Every day we get up, the work goes and goes and goes and goes, and we fall into bed at night. There are no longer any distractions, no family and mother-in-laws to go visit, just work. So it's actually, we're been doing a lot of work. Adversity. I rolled my crawler tractor a few years ago. At which point I said, "Do I really, really, really want to keep doing this?" But I didn't die, and so I said, "Okay, I got to get back on it and drive." And so I did.
You got back on that horse. Good for you. So you're here to tell the tale, and you're keeping calm and carrying on.
Carrying on.
Good to hear. Quentin Modat, one of our French speakers, you have a tale of tractor woe, I think, as well. I remember you telling me a little while ago that last year you had a fire at your winery, which was already bad enough. But the good point was that the tractor was at the garage being mended. I think I'm right. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. It was not as dangerous as John's story, but 2019 has been quite tough for us, and it started with a fire in our warehouse where we stock all the equipment for the vines. So we lost everything just at the beginning of the season work in the vines, and luckily one tractor was at the garage being followed up by the constructor. And once we got it back to start doing what we could with this one, it got stolen just a few weeks after because we had nowhere to storage it. So that was only the beginning of our nightmare of 2019.
And then you thought 2020 would be so much better, right?
Yeah, of course. We jumped into 2020 with a lot of hope.
I shouldn't laugh, but I feel your pain. I feel your
But
pain.
we learned to see the positive aspects.
Yeah, now we're laughing about last year, but we figure out that every year they stop manage. So we are adapting all the time. This time it's for coronavirus.
What are you finding are the biggest practical challenges about the coronavirus? You know, whether it's social distancing or traveling or, you know, having workers in the vineyard. What for you are the biggest challenges?
I think like in the vines, it's really like business as usual. Luckily our team has not been affected, so we are really working as hard as last year. It's even easier this year because we have the equipment this year. But really what is difficult is really the commercial side. We didn't really see it. On my side, I didn't really see it coming because we were so concerned of other aspects, such as the Brexit, such as the Trump taxes. So I didn't really realize how bad it will be with the COVID. But we basically lost half of our turnover.
Wow! Is that because your turnover is through restaurant trade?
Yeah, in France and abroad, mostly high-end restaurants, gastronomic restaurants, also wine shops. But even on the export market, when we sell to an importer, he will also sell to the restaurants and to the wine shop.
Yeah.
So
he's not buying. Yeah.
So they are not buying either. It's mostly the commercial side which is difficult.
I should say there is.
And on the commercial part, there is something else. There is something which on production part for us. As John said, the work is still the same. There is a lot of work, and we're very focused on it because we can't do anything else. But what's changed is that we hired extra worker on the vineyards to help us through the work we have now. And this year we tried to be to save a little bit of our money. So we did not hire our worker. We have to do more with the people. So what we're doing every Saturday morning, we're making our girlfriend work in the vineyard to help us.
That relationship
has been like five Saturday now. They are helping us 5 hours every Saturday morning, and we are going to continue that few Saturday still. So it's kind of free worker for us, but it's nice because we're working in a family all together during the weekend.
Good for you, good for you. Jem, are you making your girlfriend work in the vineyard as well? Jem Harris from La Louvière. Turn your mic on. Are you making your girlfriend work as well?
No, she's actually busy working, doing her job, so no, I haven't been able to persuade her to come out into the vineyards at this stage. But it's a good idea. Taking note of your idea, Quentin.
So what has changed for you, Jem, since lockdown? What's different?
I think, the contact with outside people, with the outside world has obviously changed. I think we've we quite early decided to sort of pivot and put together an online shop very, very quickly to try and sort of save some of the sales. And that seems to have worked quite well. We looked at our sales figures for the last, when was it, about a week ago now, and we're pretty much the same as we were last year. So that's been a big relief. So yeah, fingers crossed things continue. And
yeah, there's a big shift, isn't there, to online these days? I mean, obviously, we're doing this online session, which is a first for our group. Amber Lebeau, her Spitbucket, has kindly curated a site that is listing all these virtual wine events. That's something that I wouldn't even have thought about doing a year ago, and now suddenly everybody is online. And we've also put together a mixed case of Outsiders wines, which is going to be, it's available online now through a wine shop in Limoux called L'Atelier des Vignerons. I'll send you the details at the end of this session. But yeah, things have definitely shifted from in real life from IRL to URL, haven't they?
Yeah.
In a big way. Some of us are more, I suppose, online savvy than others. Who shall I choose? Brigitte Chevalier, Domaine de Cébène. How is it for you, Languedoc and lockdown? Are you enjoying this online experience?
Well, I would say this is when I found out that my daily life could have been called already a quarantine. Mm-hmm. I'm every day of the year inside of the vines, on the countryside. I don't meet that many people, some of the workers, some visitors, and my husband. But I would say it's just a lie, just to live a bit like being a nun or in a quarantine anyway. So the change is not so obvious. What is a big challenge for me is that everything is so slow. I need more time to organize, to plan, and if I want to receive the materials, any raw materials for the bottling lines, for example, for the bottlings, or for the vines for the works in the vines, it takes much more time, and the delivery are so slow, and so that kind of thing is quite nervous-taking.
Mm-hmm. That must be a challenge.
That's a very interesting comment. Actually, I was reading because my life is so exciting, a packaging magazine this morning, and they were saying that they're seeing really unusual shortages. For example, printer ink is now is in a shortage because it uses ethanol, propanol, and those two components are going into hand gels and sanitizers. So I was wondering if any of you guys are seeing shortages of whether it's equipment, kind of basic equipment, or anything that you use on a day-to-day basis that suddenly you just can't get hold of now.
So far, I didn't see anything except masks and all these things. And even it's a good thing we can get all these products to clean the hands through how do they call it? We can produce them from alcohol. So at least the grapes and the wine is a good help for us. But yes, shortage might come. I'm sure, but not necessarily with the product in the vines, because we're told they should be okay, and the industry or the agriculture is working hard. I mean, there are two speeds in France, probably in other countries: the people working and the people not working, and it has been decided that a lot of people in the agriculture are working, and so they are working a lot. And those who are not working can, relax or take it.
Going mad.
Exactly.
Brigitte, I remember you telling me very recently you were going to bottle a new wine, weren't you? The first ever white wine from Cébène, and that had to be cancelled for some reason?
No, it was postponed. I bottled last week on the wines I wanted to bottle. I had made a reservation a few months ago to bottle at the D-Day, the good time for the planet. But for the white wine, I have to wait until until the end of May. And yes, indeed, it will be the first time in my life ever that I will be bottling and enjoying a white wine from my vines.
So something positive coming out this year. Excellent. Excellent.
Life goes on.
Phew, yes, thank goodness for that. I'm going to flip over to the Corbière, to John Bowen at the Domaine Sainte Croix. How are you doing, John? Oops, you're going to need to turn your microphone on. Let me unmute you. There you go. That's better. So how's it been for you and Liz down there in the Corbière? How are you getting on?
Well, at the risk of repeating a lot of what people have said, there's been a lot of things that have been very similar to what always happens at the beginning of the year, in terms of the workload, in terms of the way the vines are starting. It's been a pretty full-on start to the year because there's been a lot of rain and it's been quite warm, and so everything is going mighty fast, and that's with all the backdrop of what's going on elsewhere. Until Jem said that he managed to maintain his sales with his online thing, I was feeling a bit like I was outside the outsiders, because commercially we haven't noticed a huge dip for the time being, which has been quite reassuring, because your first thoughts are everything's going to close, it's all going to finish, but we haven't really seen that. Possibly because we don't deal with as many restaurants who seem to be the worst hit.
So John, are most of your wines exported or cellar door sales, or?
We're probably about 70% export. Cellar door, nothing. Well, very little.
Yeah.
I had a weird experience yesterday of actually doing a tasting with somebody. Now that might sound very mundane and very banal, but it was in the cave. But it was the first tasting since, I don't know, maybe January, February, something like that.
Wow.
So on each side, you're trying to figure out, okay, how's this going to work? How are we going to interact? How are things going to taste? Obviously, we weren't wearing masks.
Yeah.
Although that could be that could be a new thing, mask with straws for tasting. But and it worked really well. But it's just questions you ask yourself before going into these situations that you would never have asked yourself before. And I think that's one of the on a lot of subjects, that's one of the results of this whole period, these last couple of months, is a lot of people are asking questions that they wouldn't have asked at all before, or not so often, or questions that don't seem so relevant. And so I think that's going to be one of the lasting effects of this period. But yeah, no, in general, things are going well. It's 28 degrees. There's not a cloud in the sky.
Don't make me jealous.
Hang on. You missed the punchline. We've got grass around our ears, so I'm completely jealous.
You need someone's girlfriend to come and trim the grass for you.
Yeah. Well, Quentin and Louis, if your girlfriends are only working 5 hours, can we employ 5 more hours?
I'm not sure you can try, but not
complaining.
Talking about pivoting and having...
There is some slight back.
Talking about pivoting and having to do things differently, Shasha, have you noticed any kind of major changes? I know when I've spoken to your mum, she said things have gone very quiet on the order side, but have local people been ringing on your doorbell to come and buy wine to drown their sorrows, or does that not quite happen up in Cébène?
No, not in a commercial sense, but I think we have seen a lot more, a lot of interaction on other things like, grocery runs and things like that. But for us, really, no, the commercial side has been really very, very quiet.
Okay. And what about John Bojanowski? Let me just unmute you because you're, oops, can I unmute you? There we go. You're American, as we've figured out. What sort of echoes do you get from your customers in the States? I mean, do they expect you to just keep calm and Carignan, or what's the feeling from over there?
The importer still has a little bit of stock, but his orders stopped dead with the tariffs in the autumn, and expected them to pick up around February, and the coronavirus killed that. So we're still waiting with the US. Fortunately, there's a lot of other countries in the world, and several of them have continued to order a bit. So like Dawn, the wines are slowly going out. In the cellar door, it's pretty much dead.
Okay. But logistics wise, can you still ship wines fairly easily, or?
Yes, it takes longer. You never quite know when the shipper is going to show up, and we're waiting for some wines for a groupage to Germany, but the wines are coming from Fougères, and it's been 2 weeks, and they're still not here.
From Fougères.
It's a 45-minute drive.
Fougères and to where John is really not very far, is it?
So, just
John, the wine. Sorry, the wine that you sent me, which is the Fleur de Pau. It's a really interesting wine. What got you into experimenting with skin contact on Muscat?
I had been tasting for several years Italian and Slovenian orange wines and Georgian orange wines, especially when I was in the UK, and thought that they were very, very complex and fascinating and interesting. But I also thought that they were often a bit too powerful. Saint-Jean-de-Minervois is it's an appellation for sweet fortified muscats, Muscat de Saint-Jean-de-Minervois. And so I thought, well, if with a very aromatic grape like Muscat, we could make an orange wine, could we make it so it is interesting, complex, powerful, and has an extra dose of yummy? And that's what we're trying to do. And so every year, it's been 5 years now, each year I change how I do it, trying to move it in that direction. A little bit more light, a little bit more.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. In fact, the first thing that I wrote is that it's impossible not to say wow out loud when first smelling this wine. But I often find Muscat too flowery and then without enough depth on the palate, particularly when it's dry. And this had extraordinary depth and length. And as you were saying, sometimes with these orange wines, it's just a bit too much tannic character, but you've just got this beautiful texture on it. So very exciting wine. Does that wine get sold in the UK at all?
It does, yes, it does.
Yeah, I think is it Cave de Pirène who imports that? Yeah.
Okay, that's fabulous.
In this box of 6 wines that we've put together, John makes the orange wine, somewhat unusual. We've got some whites. We've got the sparkling wine Modat from Rives-Blanques, which we've talked about. Let's just talk about a couple of the other wines maybe that are in that box so that people know what they're getting. Jem, do you want to say a couple of words about your wine? You've got a rosé in there, haven't you? Oops. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, it's a rosé from the appellation Malpère. So it's a cooler appellation in the Languedoc with slightly different varieties from many of the other appellations. So we're using Cabernet Franc, we're using Malbec, and a little bit of Syrah as well. So it's a clean, fresh, bright, slightly acidic wine. The Cabernet Franc has some slightly sort of green characters, which I find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a slightly different type of a rosé, I would say.
Yeah. And with temperatures set to hit about 27, 28 degrees today in the south of France, you know, rosé season is
upon us.
Upon us. I know. Oh, thank goodness.
It's a lovely ruby grapefruit kind of wine, and I thought it had that you talked about the acidity. It really tingles, so it's got lovely energy.
Mm. It's got a cheeky little label as well, hasn't it? Jem, do you have the bottle handy? Yeah, nice. Okay. Let's go back to John Bowen for a second. John, do you have your wine handy there? Do you have your bottle handy? Yeah. Do you want to tell us a couple of words about what you've put into this case, the mixed case?
This is a cuvée which is called Magnifique. It's Appellation Corbière. So we're in the very southernmost part of the Appellation, so up in the hills. And this is a blend of Carignan, so we're keeping on, and Grenache and Syrah. And it starts its life, so vinification and aging is by parcel, and then it's blended after aging. And so this is a blend of power and balance, and it's got really good freshness as well, which particularly comes from the Carignan. So it has great drinkability.
I know that you know, lots of people disagree with using the word minerality, because what does it mean? But I felt that wine had this incredible seam of minerality. What did I write about it? I said so much minerality in this wine, it seems to glint in the mouth like liquid mica. It almost shone with minerality. I thought it was beautiful.
That's a wonderful thing to hear, because if there's one thing, basically richness and ripeness in the south is easy. You get that every year without thinking.
Yeah.
And so you need something to kind of offset that and to counterbalance that. And so you saying that about minerality is brilliant for us, because that's one of the cards we try and play to balance the wine and to just kind of get that slightly different texture that leads you to the second glass. So it's not all about just impressing people with the first glass. It's not necessarily a show pony. Yeah, so that's really good to hear.
I guess we should work our way around the box then, shouldn't we? Quentin and Louis, can you just tell us a couple of words about what you put into the Outsiders mixed case?
Yes, sure. So the wine we're presenting in the box is Le Petit Mot d'Amour in white, because we're doing the three color, red, white and rosé. So this one is a white wine. Petit Mot d'Amour means little word of love, and it's a play word with our family name. So this bottle is made with some dry muscat. It was not only, but the main idea when we created this bottle a few years ago, when we started to work here in Domaine with my brother, it was around this grape, and it's blended with some Roussanne and Grenache Blanc mostly. So it gives a very aromatic, very explosive nose, mostly because of the dry muscat, which is explosive and exotic taste. What else can I say? And also we try to have a nice balance with a nice acidity, to have like a summer kind of wine, very fresh, very easy to drink. Here it is.
Good job.
At the same time, I know that you're talking about like an easy summer wine that's fresh. I think there's also quite a bit of complexity in that. It had some really gorgeous green spice with a little fennel herb and a seedy freshness. And I completely agree with you about the nose. I've got in my garden blossoming right now a shrub called Choicea, or the other name that it goes by is Mexican orange blossom. And it's got this glorious heady smell. And the minute that I poured your wine to taste it, I just thought, this is exactly what it smells like. And I actually went outside to go and check, maybe I wasn't just imagining it, but it really has, it's a wine that just, it celebrates spring. It's a real May wine.
It is a very summery kind of wine, but it's not an easy or little wine.
No, exactly.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
Okay, and if I just flip over to Brigitte at Domaine de Cébène. Brigitte, the wine that you put into the Outsiders box has a fun name, Belle Lurette. Fun.
This is the
Belle Lurette.
Belle Lurette. Well, the meaning of Belle Lurette means in French a long time ago. This is an old expression, an old meaning, and this is how old people talk when they want to say moons ago. Mm-hmm. The vines, the Carignan vines are almost 100% in this blend, in this wine, have been planted many moons ago, I would say. Okay. So Carignan again. the other side of the t-shirt.
Good for you.
Okay. To me, well, this varietal Carignan is a magic one. It's a magic varietal. It is a metaphor for the determination and for the resilience that we need to have in these days. They have been planted, well, they come from Spain, from the south of Spain, and are very resistant. They have this in their ADN, or DNA, in their blood, that they can be strong against adversity. And so this is a good example to follow to me, because then when they are at their right place, Carignan gives wine with a lot of freshness and also a lot of energetic messages. So that's exactly what I like to have at this time of the lockdown. And some other words to Belle Lurette. To me, it's a liquid link between generations, between the past generations, the one who is taking care of them, and the next to come. It's nice to think that and to enjoy wine in that way.
Brigitte, there's also, Carignan can be very tough. Jancis Robinson often says it's the one grape variety she doesn't like because it can be very intense and concentrated. But you have managed to make, and your yields are very low, aren't they? They're like 15 to 20 hectolitres per hectare. So really low, and with that, you would think, okay, we're going to get massive concentration. But you have somehow managed to make an incredibly elegant wine out of old vine Carignan. There is that concentration, and there's also that wildness that Carignan often has. But I just felt there's like a breeze of sage and lavender that runs through, and a coolness that runs through that wine, and it gives it such an elegant finish.
I think that Carignan are very much like the vintner wants to be, and it very much depends on which soil it grows and how they will be managed or cared for in the cellar. So it was one of the big surprises I had when I purchased this plot. It is the last plot of vines I purchased 2011, and the grapes were brought to the co-op, and so nobody had no ideas about the taste it could bring.
Oh wow!
Private with separate vinification, and really 2011, which is sold out or drunk for now, or in the cellar of somebody, I don't know. It's already, it was showing its freshness and delicacy. I think
it's a very unusual plot of Carignan there, because it does have, as you say, delicacy, which is not something you normally associate with Carignan.
That's true.
I should just gently, without wishing to be too bossy, say that I'm keeping an eye on the time here. We've been online now for 45 minutes, and as I said at the beginning, I know Jem Harris has got to go and do some bottling today. Jem, how is it going? Have you actually started yet, or what's the
we've just about finished the bottling actually. So it's been a very busy last couple of days preparing, getting all the wines ready, and hoping that all of the dry goods arrive on time. But everything's actually gone relatively smoothly. With another hour, we'll be finished. So, yeah.
Okay, well, we will endeavour to finish on time so that you can go and finish that all up. If anybody is curious to taste the wines that we've been talking about today, you can get your hands on them very easily. I've put the link into the chat here, but I can also possibly, let's see if I can share my screen. Oh no, so many options, too tricky. Languedoc Wine Shop is the link that you'll be looking for, languedocwineshop.com. I will put it on the Outsiders social media channels as well, so that you can find it there. They've kindly put together a box for us with these 6 wines, which shows the diversity of this region. This is one of the things that Languedoc is so great for. We can make many different kinds of wine. So in the box, you've got some red, some rosé, some white, some bubbles, and even some orange wine. So you've got a really nice snapshot of what can be done down here. It's tip-top quality. I mean, I would say that because I'm promoting this group, but it is.
And Louise, how much is it? How much is the box?
It's €95, and that includes delivery to the UK and to 7 other countries, 7 European countries. So you've got Benelux, France, Germany, Australia, Italy. Don't think I've forgotten anybody, but again, it'll be on the link. But yeah, so if anybody would like to get their hands on those wines, that's how you do it. If you want to stay sort of up to date with the adventures of the Outsiders, that's the logo you're looking for, and that's the website that you're looking for, languedocoutsiders.com. And I guess all that remains to be said is a big thank you to Tamlyn for doing this with us. It was a bit of a leap into the unknown, and it's really kind of you to support us in this way. There was a great article on Jancis's site recently about drinking small to support small wineries, and that was something that really resonated with us. You know, everyone's going through hard times, but that particularly struck a chord. And thank you to all the people who kindly signed up to listen in. I'm just looking at the chat because there's one more question. Oh, how many of these importers, how many of these producers, I beg your pardon, are imported to the UK? That's a question that I can answer afterwards because I'll need to do a little roundup. I've got a handy chart, in fact, that I can send you, which shows you exactly who has got UK representation. So thank you to everybody for taking the time to join us today. I think that probably wraps it up, unless anybody's got something that they desperately need to say. No?
Louise, I will send you my tasting notes. They'll be published on jancisrobinson.com, but I'll send them to you so that if you need to use them for the outsider stuff, you've got them.
That's really kind of you. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. So, well, this is the Outsiders signing off. Bye-bye. I'm going to press the button, so we're all going to freeze. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.